It has to be about Jesus Christ. That's entirely what this is about. At the center of this channel will be Christ and Christ only. Sports is something that can be used here on earth to glorify God and can be something that can draw us all near each other and can help us to connect with each other as well. But the foundation of this channel is centered around Christ, and I want to keep it that way. I talked about in my last video about how idolatry is a huge issue with sports and how many Christians give themselves over to idolatry with sports. We don't want to be idolatrous in our actions at all. We want to fully give our hearts to Christ. And Paul says, whether you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God. And this can not only be applied to eating and drinking, but it can be applied to everything we do. It can be applied to soccer, football, basketball, baseball, lacrosse, hockey, track, cross country, whatever sport you play, it can be applied to that as well. Paul also says, whether we live, we honor the Lord, and if we die, we honor the Lord. I guarantee that when you are playing a sport, you are living. You should do it to honor the Lord. You should do it to honor Christ, because that's all we can do. It feels like we should keep Christ out of sports. We should keep Christ away from our personal ambitions, or that we should keep Christ out of anything really here on this earth. Now, I just want to deliver a hard truth because it's something that may be very hard to digest. If you play a sport and your main intentions behind it is only to do things that are good for yourself, it's going to be an idol. You have to understand that when you allow a sport to take over your heart and take over your mind so much, this is an idol. But Christ came to free us from these strongholds. And the thing about idolatry that's so much different than any of the other sins that we struggle with is that we can't see it. It's not an outward conflict, but it's an inward intention. And there's a story in the gospel about Jesus when a man comes up to him and asks him what good deed he has to do to enter the kingdom. Jesus told him to obey all the commandments. And with his reply, he said, I've done all these things. I've obeyed all these commandments. But Jesus knew that there was more in his heart. He knew that his inward intentions were not where they needed to be, and he saw the idolatry in his heart. Jesus replied to him saying, there's one thing you must give up. Give up all that you have, sell the money you have, and follow me. You see, this man was very rich, and he let the idolatry of money take over his heart. And after Jesus told him this, he went away sad because he was so rich, and he did not want to give up his money or his love for money. But on the other side, there is Peter, one of the 12 apostles, who was able to overcome idolatry because he was willing to follow Jesus. You see, when Jesus came to Peter and told him to follow me, Peter was ready because he had not let him being a fisherman take control of his heart. Peter immediately left his fishing nets and followed Jesus because he wanted Jesus that bad. He did not let idolatry consume his heart. And see, God honored Peter's love for fishing and turned him from a fisher of fish to a fisher of men. You see, unless it's God's complete plan and God knows that there's something bigger for you and he wants to take sports away from you, I guarantee if you give your heart to God, he won't take your sport away from you. And I think that God will give you something bigger in return. With sports, we have to put down our own fishing net and follow Jesus completely. This right here is my fishing net. And in my career, there was a point where I idolized my fishing net. I don't know what your fishing net may be. It could be a soccer ball as well. But I'm telling you, if you truly love Jesus, give it up. I'm not saying you have to give up your sport. I'm not saying you have to give up anything that is really dear to you. But you have to give up that part of your heart that loves this sport or your fishing net more than God himself. See, I've given up my fishing net and I found that I've been able to work even harder. I found more of a love for the game of soccer. And God has allowed me to glorify him through soccer even when things haven't made sense to me. That's really all I wanted to say today. I'm not sure God will have the same plans for you as he does for me, but I think that's the beautiful part about it is that God has plans for each and every one of us. I think there is one sovereign fact though, and that is that God is sovereign. God wants us to be a part of his will, and he will make us a part of his will unless we completely reject it. It has to be Christ, though, and that's what we have to remember. It's not this ball. It's not this world that we live in. It's not everything that we see around us, but it's Christ that is the center of our lives, and that's what matters at the end. Our hearts must be with Christ, and he'll give us everything we need.